All right. Next question. I think we're going to do this question. It is from Kay Kotwis, who says this. Hey, Glenn, it's blatantly obvious that Israel has lost control of the narrative. Even if they didn't kill Charlie Kirk, the fact that massive amounts of Americans are pointing the finger at them reveals their PR has completely failed, doesn't it? Do you really think that the takeover of Paramount, CBS, and TikTok will change that? And if not, are you afraid of the measures that a powerful, desperate country like Israel is willing to take? Having Larry Ellison, a single, extremely blatantly pro-Israel billionaire, go on this massive, frenetic shopping spree, not just for major media companies in the West like Paramount and the parent company of CNN to control CBS News and to control Paramount's entertainment properties and CBS News and CBS itself, but also potentially CNN at the same time. Larry Ellison has seized a lot of control over TikTok, easily the most influential social media app among young Americans, where a lot of pro-Palestinian sentiment and organizing was taking place among young people, which is the reason why it was banned. I mean, that to me just strikes me as a very desperate action, because it's just how brazen it is. I mean, they prefer, the pro-Israel lobby does, to exert its influence in the shadows, in like the sewers and all the tunnels and the back rooms of Washington and on K Street. They don't like to be so overt about what they're doing because it makes more people see what they are and the influence they have. But they're looking at these unraveling poll numbers, and there was just an amazing poll out this week. We have covered a lot of these polls, by no means all. It seems like each one is worse than the prior one for Israel. CNN reported that it's the first time in history that a majority of Americans now side with or sympathize more with the Palestinians than they do with Israel. A majority of Americans sympathize more and feel more connected to the Palestinians than they do to Israel. It's impossible to overstate how stunning that is. If you had told me that was going to happen even 5 years ago, I would never have, I would have thought you're living in some sort of parallel universe that I've never visited. And a major part of that change is young conservatives. I don't mean 18 to 24. I mean conservatives under the age of 50, basically people who haven't been feeding themselves for years on Sean Hannity and Fox News, who have a more diverse range of voices and sources of information than people who plop themselves down in front of Fox for the last 20 years, 30 years, which is purely pro-Israel. And I'm not convinced, as the question suggests, that can be reversed. People have seen what they've seen. Once you open your eyes to these things, it's very impossible to have your eyes closed to them. And the horrors of what Israel has done and the accompanying awakening about how our government is so dedicated to Israel, so captive to it, it's been so rapid in the last 2 years and has contaminated so many different sectors and circles that it, not to use this cliche, but it seems to have reached the tipping point where it's just now all falling over. And it seems like a fait accompli that this is just continue to grow and be a permanent part of the American framework. And look, buying CBS, as much as you want to say CBS News is a dying institution, which it is, you're talking about Paramount, which still has a lot of cultural sway. And so they control, the Ellisons do, films and shows and movies and their content. CBS as an entertainment network can still attract people, and they control the content of that. And then, 60 Minutes, CBS News, the morning show, nobody watches those shows, but 60 Minutes still has some cachet. They still have some impact online. It's not nothing. It's far from trivial. But they're not just investing in those kind of old media outlets, but also TikTok, where every Democrat and Republican who voted to ban TikTok will tell you the reason it got so many votes in Congress finally was because the ADL called for it to be closed, because people started realizing that a major source of information that was changing the minds of Americans, not just American liberals, but American conservatives about Israel, was constantly watching what Israel was doing in Gaza, and then also understanding how devoted our political leaders are to Israel, how often they visit, how much money they want to give there, often at the expense of what are supposed to be their own constituents. And I don't know how you reverse that trend. You go and look at propaganda campaigns Israel is currently running, and they're met with immense amounts of scorn and hatred and anger. I saw a clip today where Glenn Beck, his whole adult life, he's been a Christian Zionist of Israel, he's a supporter of Israel. He went to an event and for young people, and multiple questions that were highly critical of Glenn Beck for his support of Israel, or just questions about why the U.S. should support Israel, were asked. This has become extremely common. If a conservative, prominent conservative, goes and speaks at colleges or for young people, it's guaranteed they're going to get a lot of those kind of questions about Israel. It is everywhere. And yeah, people like Larry Ellison and the people who work in Israel who are trying, they forced TikTok to hire a former IDF soldier, an American citizen who went to Israel to fight in the IDF, to hire her to be in charge of censoring all content related to Israel and supposed anti-Semitism. I mean, the censorship is becoming more and more severe, and the investments, we're talking about billions of dollars in overt propaganda to try and reverse this trend in a lot of platforms that shape American thought is shockingly unlimited and right out in the open. The problem is that there are so many different sources of information now. Obviously, we don't live in the world of the 70s, 80s, and 90s where there's only 3 networks. We certainly don't even live in the world where there's at least 5 other cable networks, or even the early iteration of blogs. And we're talking about podcasts and independent shows and just YouTube programs all over the place. And it's not very controllable. And Western governments know that. That's why they're also engaged in for their own reasons, in very extreme and egregious acts to try and control it. But it seems like a losing battle to me. I hope I'm not being overly optimistic. I wouldn't sell the Israelis short or underestimate their ability to control messaging and the flow of information inside the United States. They've proven their great skill at that over decades in a way that would make anyone foolish to just immediately dismiss their efforts as futile and likely to fail. People like Larry Ellison are worth $350 billion for a reason, and they think a lot about what they're doing, and they are serious people who are very devoted to that cause above all else, and they'll, I'm sure, do anything to make it work. I just think the forces of progress in terms of how the internet functions, in terms of how information is now decentralized and diffuse, and especially that they're very slow to react to the last 2 years of propaganda. They didn't seem to realize what the effects would be of committing a genocide in front of the whole world, where everybody, including people in Gaza, have cell phones. They ban the international media, but you don't even need the international media. The people of Gaza, as poor and deprived as they are, could show the world themselves what was happening. And we didn't just see it for 2 weeks or 2 months. We saw it for 2 years, day after day after day after day. And we heard, not just being me, but so many people have heard other people commenting on this, saying how evil and awful it is and questioning why the United States is there, to the point where it has contaminated or informed a huge new generation of people. And Larry Ellison can buy the entire internet. And I doubt seriously that there's going to be any substantial reversal of the tide of Israel losing the trust and faith and support of the American people, not just the American liberals and Democrats and the left, which they've long ago written off, but American conservatives as well. Obviously, you have very prominent people. Candace Owens, who whatever you want to say about her is, I think, the most listened to, or one of the top 3 most listened to independent media voices in the country. And Nick Fuentes, who has become rapidly more influential among young American conservatives, huge numbers of them. They're far from aberrations. Obviously, Tucker Carlson, whose political show is number 1. I mean, it's become, I wouldn't say necessarily mainstream or indicative of what it means to be on the American right to oppose Israel, but it used to be something that would be career-ending, would relegate you to the fringes, and now it's something that the American right is extremely comfortable with. has huge numbers of influential voices and people and groups uniting to question it. And I see what Israel is doing. I see what these billionaires are doing. I find it disturbing. I've talked about it a lot. But in terms of whether they're going to succeed in meaningfully recapturing the American people as propagandistic drones walking around reciting pro-Israel sentiments, or more importantly, if they think they can at least weaken it enough so that politicians in Washington, who ultimately are the only people they really care about as long as Congress and both parties support Israel, that they'll feel unthreatened enough where they can be pro-Israel. Because right now, a lot of people, especially in the Democratic Party, know if they run in the primary and they're pro-Israel and their opponent is not, they're going to have an extremely hard time winning. And that political pressure works. And I just don't see, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. The pro-Israel lobby is very powerful. A lot of these politicians have been spouting pro-Israel dogma for decades, and these people start to lose an awareness of what they really believe and what they're pretending to believe to advance their careerism. And I'm sure some of them just think they believe it because they've been having to pretend long enough that they do. So I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, that there's going to be a collapse immediately in the power centers in Washington, but these changes and transformations in American public opinion on this topic, which used to be basically closed off to debate, are really quite stunning. The severity of it has surprised me because of how many tools have been developed to keep it under control for so long, and it's just kind of exploded. And I don't think you can put all of that back and just put the top on it again and keep it under control. Maybe they'll make some inroads, but I think they're going to be trivial and marginalized at best. And obviously, at some point, that's going to have some real effect on U.S. policy toward Israel. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.